Hey everybody, this is Games Plus James and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. Now today we're going to take a look at how to add a dialogue box to your game. A basic way of just being able to show either characters speaking on screen, or perhaps you might want to show like tutorial text in a little box below what the player is doing. And we want to be able to like activate it at certain points and go to different bits of text within our script that we might have. So it's very straightforward, and the idea is that it will be able to be used in lots of different games and lots of different situations. So what I've just set up here is a very straightforward little, just a 2D player movement thing. You can move left and right, and there's a little guy here. It doesn't really matter too much, especially for this video. We're just going to take a look at the concepts behind how to add text into your game. So obviously, to start off with, we need a script that we're going to use. So I just have a simple, straightforward thing here. You can just write any text file is all we're going to use for this. So we have text, more text, blah, 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 all this stuff. So we're going to drag that into our project file. We're going to create a new folder for us in our assets folder. Create folder. We'll say just text for there. So we'll drag that in here. And another thing that we're going to need is the frame that our window makes. So we're going to create an extra folder again. We'll just call this our art folder. And into here, I'm going to drag this file that I've made, which I'll link to down below in the video description. So all this is, if we just pop in the sprite here, it's just basically a very simple little pixel arty kind of box with a little bit of a corner round edge. Just a basic little box that we can use for our text box. Basically, it's fairly straightforward. I'm just going to change a few settings here. We'll set that to 32. It's single point. It's 32 by 32, so we set the max size and true color. We apply these changes. So basically, one of the handy things within Unity, within the UI system at the moment, is that although this box is just like a square box with round cornered edges, if we were to add this into the game, if we just go UI image, just zoom out here. If we were to create this as our source image here into our window, but we wanted to obviously we don't want the text box this size, we want to make it a little bit bigger. If we stretch it like that, our corners will get all stretched and weird and strange looking, which obviously isn't really what you want to have with your text box. So we're just going to delete that. So we'll just delete the whole thing. What you can actually do within Unity here is, if you go into Sprite Editor and we grab the green joints here and you drag it so it's just down below where the curve starts, and we do the same here. So it's just the same. It's making a little square there, and we want to do the bottom one the exact same as well, and the one on the right here, like that. So what this does is basically it creates little sections. So Unity will know, okay, if the top left corner of the box can only be this shape, the top of the box, however, will be this thing, just repeated all the way over until the box reaches the corner. So if we just apply these changes here, and we go back in to this, go to game object and go to UI, and rather than create an image, if we create a panel up here and change our source image to be the window that we've brought in. So now you can see it's taken up to, actually the color is making the alpha go. Yeah, we want to make that solid. So now you can see it's way bigger than the image that we used to start off with, but we've still got the same scale on the corner edges. And if we grab the corner like this and move it around, rather than being like stretched and skewed all over the place in a way that doesn't look good at all, now we can just drag it down and it'll adjust the stuff to fit in nicely. If you start making it smaller, it starts to do some weird things sometimes, but that's just a matter of adjusting your file that you're using to suit your needs. So it's pretty handy. So there we go. Now we've got a nice little adjustable text box that fits in just perfectly there, just the way we want it. So obviously, if we're going to have a text box, we're going to need some text to go within it. So if you go again to Game Object UI and select text, so we'll drag this over here. Obviously that's very hard to read, so we'll change the color. Oh no, not best fit, stop. Color to a brighter white, and we'll make the font style bold just so it stands out a little bit more. So we've got text here, and it's there now doing that, and that's nice. But we've no way of like importing the text into our scene. So we need to create a script that will go to our text file that we have, which is our, if we go look at our resources again, we can see we've got like 8 or 9 lines here, each broken by like just a return at the end of it. So we need to be able to bring that into our scene and be able to actually apply that to the game. So we're going to write, first of all, we're just going to write a little script to show how this system will work. It won't actually apply to our dialogue just yet. So we're just going to turn that off for the moment. We'll go into our scripts folder and we'll create a new script. And we'll just call this text importer. And we'll double click this to open it up. Okay, so now here what we're going to need is we're going to need the file that we're importing into the game. So public text asset text file. And a text asset is basically just a block of text essentially. And what we're going to do is create an array of strings, and each line will be taken into the array as a separate object. So public string, and then 2 square brackets, and we'll call this not dialog, we'll say text lines. And basically all that happens is we don't even need to use our update function here, but in our start function, what it's going to say is, first it'll check that there's a text file there. So if text file is not equal to null, because we want to make sure that there's actually something there, or else the system will have a weird crash of some kind. Basically all it says is, so as long as there's text file there, we'll go to our text lines array that we've created, and basically text lines is equal to text file, oh, that should be a capital F up there actually, just to make it readable, text file dot text dot split, and within some brackets here /n, close that bracket, and then close this like that. So what we're doing here is we're getting our text lines array, and we're saying, okay, what we want to put into that array is, from our text file, grab the text within that and split it into separate pieces wherever we see /n. And obviously within our example text we don't see anything saying /n, but /n is basically the way that it recognizes when there's a return has been pressed within the text file. Although it's not visible, it's behind the scenes code kind of. So if we go back into Unity here, we're going to create a new object, create empty, and we'll call this text importer. And we've got a problem in our script here. I'll just reload them. Oh yes, there we go. We still had a small F in there. So we go back in here. No, it's still saying there's an error on line 12. Did I not just save that? No, I didn't save it. That's the problem. That's never good. Okay, so now on our text importer object, we're going to add that script. Why is this still saying? No, okay. We're going to add text importer script, and we're going to grab from our text folder, we're going to grab that example text, pop it in there, and now when we hit play, we should get in our text lines array here, if we drop it down, now we have all our text popped in there. So now basically when the game runs, it goes through that bit of text and it goes, okay, every line that we have there, we want to create a separate space for it. And if we go to our example text here, we'll see, so we've got this is text, this is more text, test, and then we've got these 3 spaces here. So there are empty spaces that we've created, we've just gone by returning through them, but it creates an empty line in the script here. So it's important to remember that you create an empty space, and basically every line comes out in the string here just like this, which is a very simple way to import text, and it's very straightforward. There's more complicated ways to do things using XML scripts and stuff like that, but we're not going to get into that now because we want to keep this as basic and straightforward as possible. And as you can see, once we stop the game, then we go back to having 0 in our array. So we could change the text file for something else, and it would, once it starts up again, it'll change into something completely different. So for example, actually, if we open this up here and we add an extra line, so even more text, save that, back into the game, and we run again, and on our text importer object, if it'll open, here we go. Now we've got an extra line of text in there. So it's dynamic and it's able to be changed as you go through the game, or as you go through your programming of the game. But we want to be able to show that on the screen. So we'll turn our canvas back on here and pop this down. And we're going to write a slightly more complicated script. So we won't just call it text importer. We'll say create a C# script and we'll call it text box manager. Makes a bit more sense. And then on our text importer object, we're not going to use that anymore. So we're going to click on that. We're going to delete it. And we're going to create a new object and call this. We'll call this our text box manager, and we're going to add our script to that as well. So our text box manager script, perfect. Now we need to write our text box manager script, obviously. So in here, we're going to take the same bit of code that we already used because we've already used it once, so we might as well reuse it again. And just grab that, paste it in here, perfect. But we're going to be doing some more things with this. So obviously, we're going to need to look at the box that's holding our text. So we'll do a public game object text box. We also need to access the text itself within the box. So public text, the text. Oh, not text alignment. Oh, yes. So before we jump into writing all this text, we're going to have to use an extra thing within Unity. So we're going to have to go up here. We're going to say using Unity engine .ui, and that's the way to access the UI bits that they added in Unity 5, basically. So that was it Unity 5 or was it 4.6? I can't remember now, but it was added in the past, and that's the way to directly access those things. So now we have public text, the text. So we have our text file, we have our text lines. We'll need to know what line we're on so that the box can like scroll through text as we're going. So public int current line, and then we need to know where the script will stop reading text. So public int end at line. And we'll probably want to disable the player from being able to move whenever we're doing something. We'll look at that later when we're activating the dialog box and stuff like that. But for now, we'll just add that little line in there, and we'll come back to it later. So we'll just quickly deal with that. So our player will be looking for the player in the scene. So we'll just say find object of type player controller is what I'm using for my player. You might be using something different, but that's whatever you're using for your player, basically. Instead of player controller, you might have 2D character controller, 2D controller, player movement, whatever you name your script is. It's just pop that in there. So we're going through our file and splitting it out just like we did before. And what we want to say is, so we have a value here for where we want the end of the line to be. Actually, we'll just save this and we'll look at it within Unity here. So wait for that to compile, and we'll click on our text manager here. Okay, so we know that our example text, which is, we have it open here. So we know that the way that code works within Unity. So this here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But when we put things in an array, it's going to start at 0 rather than 1. So we know that we have 10 lines here, but the last number on the line will be number 9. So for example, if we go back into here, so we know that our end at line will be 9, but we might want, because we have that space within the text, we might want them to end at 4 rather than 9. So we'll say that there is 4. But we don't want to every time that we have a script. So say that we have text within here and it just wants to read through all of this, and then we'll stop reading, saying whatever our character is saying, for example. So rather than every time we have to work out the exact length of it, what we'll say is, in our text box manager, we will say if end at line is equal to 0. So basically what we're saying is, if we leave this at 0 here, so we don't make any changes to it, what we're saying is, okay, we don't want that thing to end straight away once we get to it. What we want to say is, okay, if it still says 0, then our end at line is equal to our text lines, not text box, text lines dot length. So get the length of it, and the length we know will be 10 because there'll be 10 objects within it. But we want the last line to be 9, which will be the number of the array. So we'll say text lines dot length minus 1. So we'll save that, and basically, so that'll just say, okay, we'll go as far as line number 9, and then we'll stop. So down here now, within our update function, which I deleted in the other one, but we actually want to use in this one. So within update, it's going to be relatively straightforward here. Basically, what we're going to say is, so we have our text being referred to here, which is our text, the text. So the text, which is our text object, and we're going to access the text part of that. So the text that is on the text object, lots of text there, but what we'll say is dialog lines, or sorry, not dialog lines, what I'm saying, text lines. If we can go down to a text lines, and then within the value for that array is current line. So the start is 0, and it'll move on as we press objects. So obviously, we'll just say that actually, we'll go into the Unity here. So we've got our default text in there that says new text, but now, actually we need to hook up these things before we run it. But so we've got our text box. Actually, we should make text be a sub-object of panel, so we know that they're all one thing. So panel will be our text box, and the text itself is the text here. And we've got our text file we need to drag in, which is our example text. We'll pop that in there like that. And we will set the end at line just to be 4, just for now. So we'll play, and now it should replace new text with this is text, which is the first line of our example thing here, which is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted to do, but obviously we want to be able to scroll through the text. We want to be able to do something. So we go back into Unity again, and all we're going to say is if input dot get key down key code dot return. So what this will do is whenever we press the return key or the enter key, we're going to run a bit of code here. You might want to use something else to go to your dialog boxes, spacebar, or whatever you want to use in your own game. What we're going to say is current line plus equals 1. So it'll just add 1 on, it'll move on to the next bit of script, which is fine. So we go in here, we'll play again. We should get our first bit of text. If we hit enter, we move on to the next line, we move on to the next line, we keep on going through, we get to the end bits. We keep hitting enter. Oh no, we're going out of range of our index. So obviously we don't want to go too far there. So we'll go back in here, and since we have a value for ending our for choosing a point to end at with the script, we'll basically say if current line is greater than end at line, then our text box dot set active false. So basically, once we get to the end of our lines, we're going to turn off the text box so it's no longer visible anymore. And we want to have it being if current line is greater than end at line, because if we set it to equal to, then as soon as we get to the last line of text, it's going to turn it off. But what we wanted to say is, after we've pressed enter and the current line has gone on 1, we want to check and make sure that it's not gone too far. So basically it'll say, within this one, it'll say when end at line is 5, it goes, okay, 5 is too far, so turn off the box. Just make sure we save this. Go back in here. And now we'll hit play. And once it finishes compiling down, we should be able to pop through. So this is text, this is more text, test, test, test. Oh yes, it's going on 1 too far. Why is it doing that actually? Oh, because it's, yes, I'm thinking things wrong, because we have to remember that it's not 1 2 3 4, it's 0 1 2 3. So our line 3 is actually our line that we want to stop at. So end at line 3. So the last line that we see will be line number 3. So if we pop this out, so we can see element 3 is the last line that we want to be able to see. So now if we pop through test, test, and test, and then it closes. So that's exactly what we wanted to do there, is disable our box once it gets to the last line. But obviously, we want to be able, we don't want just our text box coming up straight away as we go through the game. We want to be able to activate these boxes and deactivate them. We might want to start at a specific line. So over here, we might want to start at line number 8 rather than at 10. Obviously, we can just do that with our current line and set that to that here. But we want to be able to do that within the game with different characters and different stuff like that. So that's what we're going to take a look at doing in the next part of this short little series. This will only actually be a 2-part little section looking at these dialog boxes. So I'll return in part 2 to look at talking to a new player, which for example this little pink guy here, or just entering into a zone where you might want to activate your text straight away. So thanks for watching everybody. I will return soon with more tutorial goodness.